The global climate strike is on tomorrow. Global warming activists going on strike to force everyone else to panic like they do. The child guru of the climate strike is 16-year-old Greta Thunberg, who led other child activists to Washington this week to lecture adults about the warming hell that they claim to see. Now, Thunberg even lectured politicians in the US Congress who treated this 16-year-old as an oracle.
You have spoken with many who have faced disasters at home due to global climate change. Could you perhaps give a couple of examples just for the committee to hear of the stories you've heard?
I've met people whose food and water supply is being threatened by environmental or climate-related catastrophes, and it's so sad that it's so incredibly many people, so incredibly many examples that is just horrible.
No facts there, just emotion, no reason. And that is at the heart of this strange cult. I mean, just have a look what happened today in Darwin. Out came the Environment Minister, Eva Lawler, to boast that the Northern Territory Labor government had just set a target 0 net emissions by 2050. Beaut. But then journalists asked the very obvious practical question: how much would this big global warming scheme actually cost?
What's the cost of delivering this strategy?
Well, the cost of not delivering this strategy, I think, is probably...
What's the cost of delivering it? We understand the cost of not delivering it. You've described that. What's the cost of delivering it?
What you give an
Everyone here has conceded we're in a budget emergency. Surely you should be able to tell us or have an idea of what the cost is of implementing.
As I said, the cost of implementing this policy is embedded through government. When you're looking at the cost of government...
Have you done any costing around this?
So this is what our government is focused on. It is about getting this response out, hearing from Territorians.
Joining me is the panel: Rita Panahi, Sky News host and Herald Sun columnist, and the Executive Director of the Menzies Research Centre, Nick Cater. Nick, please, please. You would have thought that after Bill Shorten nearly blew up his whole, well, he did blow up his whole campaign in the federal election with exactly that question about his policies, Northern Territory Labor might have learned a lesson.
You'd think so. You'd think so. I mean, one thing that the Morrison team and Angus Taylor did particularly well, I thought, was to get this debate back on solid ground, that is economics, and that you can only do what economics will allow you to do and what the technology will allow you to do. And Bill Shorten came a real cropper on that, as you know, thanks to the Fisher report, which revealed the tremendous cost of what he was doing, and never ever recovered from that. And you'd think they get it by now. You know, this is the question you're going to be asked, so do your homework. But of course, if you did your homework, you wouldn't be promising, you know, 0 emissions by 2050. I mean, who knows?
Correct.
We might be able to do it. There might be an amazing technological breakthrough, but we just don't know, do we? I mean, it's like promising, you know, Martians will land or something.
This is spot on. If they had the answers, they wouldn't propose a stupid policy in the first place. But Rita,
exactly.
You know, the thing is, as soon as it gets to the nitty-gritty, the rubber hits the road, what's the cost? You know, they go all to water. No wonder they prefer to be talking to a child like 16-year-old Greta Thunberg. I mean, so isn't it humiliating to see adults, grown politicians deferring to her? Greta Thunberg, tell us.
Well, I don't think it's so much humiliating as just so appalling that they're using this poor child to push their agenda, and for the very reasons that they won't say those things themselves, because then you will come back with a question
like,
which they can't answer.
How much does it cost?
Yeah, and, you know, give us some facts. You know, not just, you know, tell us some instances where people have faced catastrophe, had their water and food supply threatened by climate change. We're not going to just take, I know lots of people, it's devastating. We're going to want examples. Yeah. So this poor child, and I do feel sorry for her, I know she cops a lot of criticism, but she's being used like a human shield against criticism. You put the kids at the front, get them to parrot what you want to say, and no one can dare criticise them because they're children.
That's a perfect example right there, Nick Cater, because no one's going to go to Greta Thunberg and say, well, look, let me sit you down. What does your plan actually cost? Because it'd be mean. It'd be mean. That's exactly how it works, isn't it?
Well, I'll say it. I think she's talking nonsense, right? I mean, you know, nice-looking girl and all that, you know, I mean, probably she's kind to her mother and all those sort of things, but she doesn't know what she's talking about. And the iron law, of course, in politics is that everybody is left-wing on things they don't know anything about, and that's where I'm afraid she's at. And the fact that, of course, she's unable to answer specific examples. I mean, who have you seen who've actually lost their water because of climate change? No, it's always, I've spoken to somebody who's threatened by it. You know, it's always this forward threat. Look, we go around in circles on this. We've got to do something about this woke emergency. What are we going to do about it? It's just out of control, isn't it?
Oh, absolutely correct. This is the woke emergency special edition of the Bolt Report so far. But Rita, meanwhile, to hard politics, Scott Morrison and Josh Frydenberg, the Treasurer, are boasting that finally they balanced the budget 11 years after Labor started a big debt splurge. Here is the Treasurer, Josh Frydenberg.
I am pleased to inform the House that the budget is in balance for the first time in 11 years, Mr. Speaker. And a $3.5 billion improvement on what was announced in April of this year, Mr. Speaker.
OK, it's an improved figure, but it's not actually in balance still. Technically, it's $700 million still in the red, so it's still in deficit. But how important is this news?
I think it's important in that it gives comfort to people to know that we're close to surplus, if not there yet, after years of deficits. But I think at the end of the day, people care about what's happening in their own family, care about their energy bills, care about their cost of living. And
the fact their pay isn't going up.
That's it, and cost of living is. So I don't think it's going to have the sort of widespread impact, but it probably gives comfort to the business community and a lot of other people who like hearing those figures, who like to see things are in the black.
But Nick, Labor's saying this improved figure is based on, you know, a lucky spike in iron ore prices, plus an underspend of $4.5 billion on the NDIS. Apparently, Labor believes that if you've budgeted a figure, you should hand it all out, whatever. How much is there to this?
Well, I mean, it's a delight for fiscal conservatives like you and I, but I think Rita's right. This isn't cutting through in homes around the country for understandable reasons. But look, of course, there's an element of luck, if you want to call it that. But on the other hand, you know, I mean, a government has policy settings that encourages exports and productivity. Then you're going to make your own luck. And as for the NDIS, this is very interesting, this $4.5 billion underspend, as it were. You know, in the end, what's really trapped the government for the last 6 years is the fact that Labor made all these promises ahead of time. So it's not, you know, cutting spending is very hard when you're locked into these things on the never. And I'm glad that they've pulled back on the NDS, because there are clearly problems with that scheme. And we should be making sure that every dollar spent on that is going to help the people who need it, not finishing up in bureaucracies and various things, which I fear some of it is. So,
that is a rather fond hope. Rather fond hope, Nick. Now, just to your point, by the way, Rita, the unemployment rate ticked up to 5.3% today, so that goes to your point. I don't know that the headline news is helpful if people are feeling poorer. But before we go, the federal court today has given a Tamil family of illegal immigrants more fresh hope of staying here. This family's already lost every legal challenge right up to the High Court. They're on the way out, and in steps Justice Bromberg today saying they can get a full hearing on the status of their very youngest child. What's going on here?
This is just appalling. I mean, this case has cost how many millions to the Australian taxpayer? It's been dragged out so long that this couple has had 2 children who were born here. And today I was hearing complaints that they didn't have access to the swimming pool on Christmas Island, which have been disputed, those claims. But, you know, you can't say we are keeping these people in concentration camp-like conditions.
I've seen the pictures, so you're not.
And then you have them complaining about, oh, it's hard to get access to the swimming pool. Are you kidding me? I mean, this is terrible for Labor, if you're going to talk about the politics of it, because they have gone out so hard advocating for this family against their own policies, mind you. And the polling shows that even the majority of Labor voters think that if the courts find you not to be an asylum seeker...
This is the cruel facilities here that they're being held in?
If the courts find you not to be an asylum seeker, you should be deported. That is the majority view.
But it's also the Labor policy. Just very quickly, Nick, we're out of time, but, you know, there's so much untruth told here. We're told in story after story, Channel 9 newspapers, whatever, this family's well adjusted, they've settled in, they're integrated very well in the community after 7 years here, 6 in the case of one of them. And yet they give an interview on Sky and it's all has to be translated. So I don't know that we're being told the truths here.
Look, we know the truth, and that is they don't qualify as refugees, right? So they have no grounds to be here. They've found a court, the court's taken up this issue of the 2-year-old child, which is a technicality. They will delay and delay and delay. But the fact is there are more than 20,000 cases like this under appeal where people have lost their refugee status. And it's best that we are able to deal with these much quicker. Otherwise, there's... You know, essentially there's sugar on the table. You appeal and you get, you know, another 3 years while your thing's being processed, and then you might be able to tug at the heartstrings.
That's exactly why they don't want this to be settled quickly. Exactly. And just to viewers, if you want to see how this is all clogging up the court system, go to the Federal Court website, the judgment page, or indeed High Court even, and see how many cases are immigration cases, a bit like this one. Rita Pani and Nick Cater, thank you both so much for your time.